Hello and welcome to the Internet Marketing Club number 2. And on this month, we're going to talk about how to use email marketing more effectively. Now, I want to see who is present. Can everyone hear me? Can we do a little sound check? Just put your hand up or give me a yay in the chat, just to let me know everything's coming through. Brilliant. Claire can hear me. Nikki, hello. Oh, by the way, if it's okay, I hope you don't mind if I just call out your names. Hi, Abby. Because last time I thought when we were doing the marketing club for the first time, I just started calling out your names because I know some of you. But I thought actually it might be appropriate just to let people know that if you're going to say something in chat, I'm going to read it out and I'm going to pull up your name and maybe reference your company. So I hope that's okay. Let me know if not, or just don't say anything and then I won't call on you. Brilliant. Okay, that's great. And we've got a few silent people in the background, but that's fine. At least you can hear me. So just for, hi, Chris. Good to hear from you. So just to let people know what the Inventive Marketing Club is and how it works, it's basically our little club where we can get together every month and just have a chat about a particular type of topic. Sometimes we'll have guests like this chap. In fact, that way, I can't actually quite work it out. He's over here somewhere. Sometimes I have guests, so I'll introduce Jack in a minute, and we'll talk about a particular topic, get a bit of Q&A done, and see basically move each of us forward every month in our marketing. So we're just doing a little bit better, and hopefully networking with some other people as well. As always, we're recording this, so if you can't stay all the way through or you're coming late, you can always watch it later on. So I'll introduce Jack. So Jack, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how we know each other, what we're working on.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack McCautry, and I help businesses and organisations understand and use social media effectively. I help all types of businesses to put together a strategy, understand which social platforms to use, all the way through to helping them create content for social media. I know Ben, probably I've been working with Ben probably for the last couple of years on a variety of different projects, and my work has extended a little bit more than social. It's helped with web content, putting together email newsletters, as we're talking about this today, and it's really just to help businesses and organizations to use online tools to market themselves better.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd say it's not just social media actually, Jack. Working with one client in particular, it's about communication in general. It's really looking at what they want to achieve in terms of reaching out to clients and then either speaking to those clients, organizing the calls, recording, transcribing, writing up, blog posting, social media, email marketing, anything really to do with communication with a client. I think you're involved in that. So it is bigger than social media, although that's where it certainly started from. So Jack's going to be joining us. He's going to come on the trip and maybe give us a bit more. We got some case studies actually going through some of the topics today. So Jack will jump in on those as and when. So something I learned from the first club is that I shouldn't ask questions and expect people to respond straight away. So what I'm going to do is ask the questions up front. Here are a couple. You can obviously answer anything else to do with email marketing. But what I'm particularly interested in is, what do you use email for? How do you use it in your business? What email tactics work well for you? What, is it putting a personalization in the subject line? Is it using images or animated GIFs or the text that you use? What works well for you? And then how do you actually measure that success? How do you know that works well? So those questions and anything else, if you put your answers in the chat as we go along, or if you've got any ideas or questions as we go along, I will answer them when we come to the end, or as we go along if it's relevant, but I won't wait this time. Okay, so basically what do we use email marketing for? I mean, there's traditionally it's just about communication really, and most people when they think about email marketing, it's really about bulk communication, and it used to be very different to what it is now. I think really email marketing now is much more targeted, it's much more focused on even down to the individual, certainly with more automated marketing where you can focus on how people visit a website and sign up for a form and then follow them up in the right way. But essentially, the way we tend to think about it is it's either a regular newsletter. So it's something where you want to keep in contact with your customers. And that's something we do. And we find while people read it, they don't give us much feedback until I actually speak to them in person. But I know they do read it and people do get value from it. So it's really useful. And it's also really nice to have sending a regular newsletter, because it gives us a deadline. So we also run another podcast as well. So I know Claire, who's the admin in the chat at the moment, she puts together everything for us. So having this regular newsletter is a really nice deadline for collating content, writing articles, producing the podcast, and getting everything ready so it can go out in this one hit. Also quite useful for sales promotions. Personally, rather than Inventive, we don't do a lot of that, although we have done with our Inventive People site. But I know a lot of customers that we work with, it can be quite useful to have targeted promotions going out at certain times when maybe they've got a dip in sales and they want to push that up a little bit, or you just want to get ahead for things like Christmas. Or, and this is something that we probably won't have time to go into too much right now, but we might want to later if people want to, on another IMC, dig into it. Marketing funnels, and really using email marketing to nudge people down a funnel. And by that, I mean, if you haven't heard the term marketing funnel, it's about capturing people who are interested in solving a particular problem. So you might capture them with a blog article, and then use email marketing to nudge them slightly further, answer more of their questions until at some point they're ready to buy from you, or they're going to drop out of the funnel because they're not interested. So they're my sort of 3 reasons, I think, for using email marketing. Jack, do you have anything else in your experience working with customers where email marketing has been quite useful?
No, you've covered all the 3 sort of core areas there. And I've worked with a variety of different people to do all 3 of those, but also sometimes to create, let's say, a newsletter that actually comprises the sales promotion and the nudge down the funnel, just so that we're not communicating with people too often, but we are trying to tick all of those boxes. We've also done it around product launches. So there might be a series of emails or videos that we've included in the email to launch a product, or sort of to pre-promote the launch of something. But that probably fits in with sales promotion. So it's really just the 3 that you've covered. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes down to planning for me. So let's move on, and we'll be talking about some case studies later, so we can see some examples of how that works. Just before we go on to that, I thought it'd be quite interesting just to look at some email stats. A lot of people ask me, what is a good open rate? What is a good click-through rate? And I'm like, I don't know. It depends on your industry. It depends on your email. It depends on your audience, how receptive they are. Whether you've got a list of, say, 20,000 people and you're just blasting out the same message to all of them, or it's a very honed down list and you're segmenting it, so you're only sending it to people who are interested in that particular message. So it's quite difficult to know. However, there is a great website which you can find on MailChimp, where they do collate. They basically look through and aggregate all of the data across all of the email campaigns that MailChimp run, and they've produced blog articles where they basically produce all this information. So you can see, for example, if you're an architect, then really you want to be looking at the industry standard is about 23% open rate, or your click-through rate is about 2.55%. It doesn't mean whether you're wrong or things are going badly if you're under that, but it just gives you an idea, maybe something to aim for if things are under that, because this is what MailChimp is reporting as industry standard. Claire, you're raising your hand. I haven't used that in the IMC first, so if you just let me, why are you raising your hand there? You've got something to say, or you're just testing out one of the emoticon features in this particular thing, or you like it? I'm interested, Nikki. Oh, maybe I have to. Right, okay. Yes, so Nikki was talking about something to do with the 10 by 10 to identify where leads come from and measure success. Now, I remember a business coach talking about that, Nikki, and I believe it's using 10 different marketing streams and measuring the success of each one of those, but I can't remember what the by 10 was for. So maybe if you go into that and we can pick that up later. Before we jump into some of the case studies, I'm just going to put up some of these comments here. There's one from Abby, just going back through to, I don't actually know what works well with email marketing and how to measure it. So she's keenly listening to this. Hopefully there'll be a few things later on in the tips for that. Nikki says that they use email marketing for getting interesting information out to customers. Now, I think what's the important word there is interesting. It's really useful, or it's good to make sure that your email marketing is interesting or attractive in some way. Otherwise, it is just blasting out spam to people. And then Claire. So just a little bit background, Claire. Claire, I hope you don't mind me saying, so Claire works with us. She's a film videographer. She compiles the email campaign. She edits the podcast. She does lots of stuff, as well as adminning the IMC here. But she also works for another company in Hereford called Selmac. And so actually it's quite interesting with Claire, because not only does she see it from our side as a sort of marketing company stroke agency, but also within a company as that marketing admin. So what she says here is we've been trying to identify where leads come through our CRM to help measure success. So that's actually quite key. It's really useful. For example, in the email marketing that we've been doing with Selmac, we can push a lot of that marketing out, and people can maybe come through to the website or call up. But actually, we want to measure its success. So part of what we need to do is to educate the people involved to make sure they're putting the right codes down on those calls coming in, so we can see that that email actually generated a tangible lead, and it's not just an existing customer. Because we found that often that the email would not generate the intent to buy, but it would generate the reason to buy at that time. So it's a nudge, it was a trigger, it was just a push over the edge. And sometimes that's definitely worth knowing. Right, so Nikki, yeah, if you do you want to share it to me, and I'll make sure that everyone can get that out on a, we'll get that out on the email, the 10 by 10 sheet. Okay, so moving on. I was going to go through some case studies. So the first one I'm going to look at is Selmac. And I think what Claire to do, focus emails to get more targeted approach, because they've been trying various different formats. From usually I think the best ones that they had were these deal emails. So Selmac, just to give you a bit of background, are a company who sells sort of big machines like CNC machines, water jet cutting machines, and all sorts of stuff, really big for engineering companies often, or manufacturers. And one of the things they wanted to do is they'd be selling, if they had discounted stock, not return stock, but if they sell a new machine, you're going to get a machine in return, so you need to get rid of that somehow. So they'd recondition it, refurb it, and put it back out there. Well, because they tended to trigger a need, there was a deal, there's some urgency to. But the general emails were working. We always went back to our plan and revisited that a little bit. One of the other outcomes was it did increase customer calls. Most customer calls, even if people weren't interested in that particular product, which we thought was interesting. So just going back to basics, we wanted to bring up a plan and sort of really work out what to measure. I think it really depends on what you want to achieve. So Claire set out the goals and looked at what the business wanted to achieve out of it, how many sales or leads they wanted, and set those and work them into the goals. So working with the team, the CRM, people who run the CRM, so they can pull out the right data. Am I? So goals was incredibly important. Can't hear anything. Am I back now? Surely I'm back. I turned everything off. That.
You're dipping in and out for me.
Right. Is that better?
I can hear you, but there's no video.
No video. Okay. How's that?
That's better.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me? Yay! I'll tell you what that was. This is, I tell you what, this is going to be a masterclass in how to webinar once we've gone through 10 of these, because we'll have it absolutely spot on. But I've got two backup systems working, and both of them decided to work at the same time. One is uploading to the internet called Backblaze, and so that basically will soak my whole broadband to back everything up. I thought I'd turn that off, my apologies. And the other was a local time machine. Both off now, and should be for quite some time. Right, so let's start back at Cellmac's plan in case you missed any of that. So the first thing really is to be more strategic about email is to have a plan. And it doesn't have to be a really complex plan, but you just need to put down a few things like what you want to achieve, whether that's more an increase in sales, you just want to get more people to click on the links in your email. Whatever those goals are, you need to write them down so you can focus on them. I think more specifically in Cellmac's case is to actually try and segment their audience, break up their audience into smaller chunks so that the emails they sent out were focused on that audience. And what that does is that's going to give you a much better hit rate as to whether people are going to do something. It's going to cost less because you're not sending to too many people. You're just sending to the people that are interested, and you're going to reduce unsubscribes because the people getting it should be interested. So that was quite interesting with Claire because she worked with the guys who ran the CRM to make sure that the data, the right data was exported out. And that in itself was some task going through that. But that was really useful. We also went through a process and we sketched out and wireframed, and by that I mean just put in the basics of an email, the components that we wanted before we went further, before we went to design it, before we went to the graphic stage and started producing the content. Because we wanted to have a really good idea of what we wanted to achieve, who it's going out to, and loosely what it needs to have on it, which is going to trigger a response. So planning ahead was particularly important. But let me dive into it. So this is an example of the two emails we've done so far. Oh, actually, we've done 4 emails so far in this series. We've got the first one on the left and the latest one on the right-hand side. Now, there's not necessarily a huge amount of difference in these emails, but there are 2 significant ones, which I'll point out here. The first one, in fact, these sections at the top, these images, were actually moving video. So as I said, Claire's a videographer, so she produced some video of these, and using a tool which I'll show you later, actually just took a little clip out of that, just so we could show people what was going on. So on the left-hand side, we've got a CNC press brake, which is like a bending machine, and then on the right, we've got water jet. What we found is that having a person and a person's face in the video seemed to have bring more engagement with the email. It didn't bring more opens because you wouldn't see that until you open it, but it did bring more clicks. So having video in there or some movement was good, but actually having a person in there was really good. So I'll just give you an example of the water jet cutting one. Basically, we had just a video there of Anthony speaking just for a second or two. Then it went to the water jet cutting, and then it, just going through a few of the motions, and then that would just loop around. That was really useful. Also, you'll notice that the button just underneath the video. So you've usually on the first screen of your computer above the fold, you've got something interesting that's going to capture your attention. It's a person, and often we're drawn to people's faces, and you've got a big orange button to click on. So you've got the action right up front. And we found that it increased the open rate from 18 to 21%, which I think is pretty good. I didn't see the average open rate for your industry, Claire, for Cellmac's industry, but generally the average is about 19 to 20%. So we're slightly beneath that to begin with, but now we're above that, which is great. However, and more importantly, I think we've seen a 14% to 30% increase in click-throughs. So, and just a little note, those percentage differences are based on the number of opens. So it's 14% of 18%, 30% of 21%. And obviously you can see there, if you can get more people to click through and a few more people to open it, it's going to multiply up the click-through rate as well. And so that's above average. So we're really happy with that. But even though it did trigger click-throughs to the websites where people could view the water cutters or go directly to an RFQ or watch the video in this case, but it also increased calls. And I think Cellmark were very pleased with the amount of additional calls coming through. And as I said, they may have had an old or cold lead from 6 months back, but actually these emails then triggered and nudged that person to buy. So that's been very useful. Yeah, Nikki asked a question about the email software that Cellmark are using. And it's Campaign Monitor is actually the software. I think that's the one I recommended to you before, Nikki. It's one we'll use, and I'll go a bit more into that later. So yeah, that was really, really nice to see that. And it just goes to show that just a little bit of planning ahead, a little bit of segmenting your market, and then just thinking about making subtle changes on each email you send to try and increase those the clicks or open rate as you go. Oh yeah, so Claire's mentioned about having a bespoke DDI, or is that a direct dial in, but basically a direct telephone number, so that when people click through from this email, they will get given a specific email telephone number on the website. That they won't know that there's a change there, but it means when it comes in, it's going to show email marketing on the actual telephone when it comes through, which is pretty cool. This is also, the reason I'm showing you this graphic is it's just an example of how you can use a triangle to focus attention on the action that you want people to deliver. So if I just go back to show you the previous slide, we've got text at the top, which hopefully will give you some benefit. We've got something interesting for people to look at and something engaging because we've got someone's face, and they may know Anthony. And then we've got the action, and exactly the same here. We're trying to say what it is, got something interesting which relates to the title, and then we've got the button at the bottom. So following this sort of very simple principle. It doesn't matter so much what you have beneath that. I mean, obviously it's got to be useful information, but at the top, really above the fold, the first thing people see, it can work quite well to have this triangular effect, particularly if it's a very targeted email. It may not work so well for a newsletter, but anything where you're selling or promoting something. So this is just a quick graph so you can see the stats over time. So if I just explain this to you, on the left-hand side, you've got the first email we sent, and on the right-hand side, we've got the latest email. And you can see over time that the click rate has really gone up quite significantly, and the open rate has only gone up a little bit, but it's great. It's gone up, and that will magnify the click-through rate. And that's what we're looking to do. Every single email sent, you really want to be sort of focusing on what can you improve. Even if it's marginal improvements, it makes a huge difference over time. Okay, so just moving on to Whitley Jones here. Now, I know I'll get your feedback on this in a minute, Jack, but they've got a tricky audience. Their audience are going to be like bursars, headmasters, anyone in charge of purchasing at a school. So I should give you some background. Whitley Jones create bedrooms and furniture for schools. So they'll fit out a whole boarding school with new boarding furniture, or they'll go and do a library or a classroom. Something they're keen on at the moment are teaching walls. So these are sort of these technology integrated storage units at the far end of a classroom. So pretty cool stuff. But their audience are quite tricky because often they're quite busy. They're used to lots of people bombarding them with sales messages, trying to get through the gatekeeper on the phone and so on. So they're used to sort of blocking all of that out. So it's quite a tricky subject. So I think we've done quite well in improving things, but it's not quite as dramatic as Cellmark. One thing I do like though, and as I said, we get this with our emails, is that customers mention the email content. So when they're speaking to the principals of the company and coming back talking about a sale, or they're just finishing off a sale or getting feedback on the job that they've done, they'll actually mention this video content, or oh, I see you did some work here, or you've got a lovely video about this, or I like the library that you put in. And that is good. Stimulating conversation with clients, I think, can work really well because it carries that conversation outside of just the sales call you're having. And also that any interesting content or video was most clicked. And by interesting, I mean stuff that isn't about Whitley Jones. It's usually about something else that they've done. So it's another school or charity they work with or something like that. Any other thoughts you've got on that, Jack?
To pick up on the tricky audience, the points that you highlighted about how people may approach the nature of this person, a business manager or a bursar, is one thing. I think the other, on the opposite end of the spectrum, in terms of why they might be difficult, is because of the nature of the purchase. as we've grown or we've got to know Whitley Joneses, people will be looking to purchase or looking for ideas 18 months, possibly 2 years away from when they're looking to refurbish something, or they don't know when a new classroom is going to arrive on their plate. So that when we're trying to make them aware of this is what we've been up to, I think it's a little bit trickier, because you mentioned about moving them down the funnel. Well, that's possibly a sales funnel, but there could also be an argument to say an interest funnel. Where are they in terms of how interested are they? And if it's not on their agenda in the short, medium term, or possibly the long term, I think that has possibly been a bit of a hurdle for us to get over, which then actually fits in with the interesting content and the videos, is to move to, when you're sharing information, it's to move it away from you as a business and to talk about topical issues. And I think it should be, as much as you can, you need to get an email that when it drops into a contact's inbox, that they actually, as close as you can, look forward to opening something. And that has got to be interesting, that it's not going to be, you mentioned about interesting content, but also it's got to add some value. It's not going to be about them all of the time. There's going to be something in there that is going to be topical, or is going to be a trending conversation. And I think as we've gone through the work with Whitley Jones, the more we talk about topics within an industry or related issues, that helps to get people interested then to click through to something.
Yes. I think the only key topics that have made people engage more when it's about the company is when it's about the company people. Yes. So when they had some new directors coming in, staff changes, I think people are really interested in that. So again, people was a key topic for them. Here's a graph, very similar to the Selmac one. And this is really nice to see. You've got the steady open rates sort of just going up, but then the click-through rate is up and down, but broadly on the up. The trend is on the up there, apart from the very last one. But that's really good. I'm really pleased to see that progress. And again, all this comes from is not so much to do with having a grand plan that we've necessarily executed. We've started with an idea, and then every single email, we're iterating it slightly. We're looking back at the stats, what's working well, what's not, and trying to improve that. And ultimately with this, they're not, people clicking through are not going to generate a sale. It just doesn't work like that. As Jack said, it could be 18 months, 2 years before they actually engage Whitley Jones with anything, or even start a conversation, because these are such long-term projects. But it's really nice that in fact, their list has gone down because of GDPR. So we've thinned things out a little bit, but they're getting much more engagement, which I'm really pleased with. So moving on to another company, Communion. Now, these are architects based in Hereford. And this is slightly different because this isn't a sales email like Selmax or a newsletter like Whitley Jones. The stats I'm going to show you here are from a follow-up to them putting in their email to access downloads. So let's just show you this. So this is the web page on Communion Architects, that if you're on any of the projects, it's going to have a footer that call to action that links people here. Or if you're on the contact us page, it's going to link you here as well if you don't want direct contact. And the whole idea about this is that Communion were getting quite busy, but a lot of people wanted quite simple information. And also, Alex found that having a more educated customer about what architecture is and how an architect can benefit them made for a better customer. So the whole point about this is that if you are interested in getting free information on what an architect does, how an architect works, how Communion works, testimonials, and that sort of thing, then you can just fill out these details here, and then it will take you through to the resource pack. So, and that's been working really well. He's really pleased with the results, so much so that it's actually built into his sales process, that anyone that Alex speaks to, he refers back to the resources and say, oh, have you seen our resources? And most people say, yeah, it's really good. And they pick out a particular section to talk about. And if not, then he can refer them back to it to make sure that when he actually comes to visit them, that they've looked at their resources. So looking at the stats here, this is actually Campaign Monitor again. And this is an automation or a workflow or an email sequence. There's lots of different terms for it. And this basically, if we go back here, so this email, people fill out their email here, we push that straight into Campaign Monitor, and then Campaign Monitor will say, for every new subscriber that joins the website, we can run this process. So it's just a list. They get added to the list, and then it runs through this process here. It's very simple. Firstly, that we get it to wait 5 minutes. We don't want it to be instantaneous. We want it to feel as if it has some sort of manual action behind it. It's not cheating as such, but we don't. I find automation works best when you have natural pauses in between things. And then we get our first email, which I've given an enlargement on the right-hand side here, which is talking about, thank you for downloading this. We really appreciate your interest. There's a link to it. It's also saying that now they're signed up to a newsletter, which I think we say on the previous screen, which will come out this, however often, and that they can easily unsubscribe from this. So they can put their email in, get the content, and unsubscribe, and they won't be bothered again. What they've also got is a follow-up after 3 days, just to see how they're getting on with the content. And it's just a sort of a nudge to say, has that been useful? Do they want to take it forward? Do they need to book a call and that sort of thing? And that's worked really well in terms of having some sort of process that becomes part of that sales funnel. It's not what I call a full marketing funnel, because it's not nudging people towards that particular sale, but it is certainly part of that sales. So this is quite interesting. I'm just going to ask a question here, but we'll come back to it later. Has anyone else tried using funnels in their, or automation in their email marketing to achieve something like this, where when you download a file, that it's going to then follow that up with an email and so on? I'll leave that for the moment. Right, moving on. Oh yeah, so just before I do move on, actually I had a really good interview with Michelle on developing sold out marketing funnels. So this is what she does. She's come from a background working for Microsoft, and she was finding that hard. It was very busy. She was a mum, and so she sort of pulled out of all of that and wanted to start doing consulting, because she was doing marketing within Microsoft. And after many, many failed starts, she came up with a concept and a sort of way of looking at marketing funnels and running through that process. It's a really interesting interview. I think she's got a lot of insights, and I think there's a 4-step process in terms of running through identifying how you should put that funnel together. So I do have the link on screen, but maybe let's see if I can do this dynamically and actually post a link through in chat. I recommend that everyone have a listen to that. It's not too long. I can't actually see the time on here at the moment, but I think something like half an hour. Definitely worth a listen if you're in the car traveling. She's got some good insights on how to set up a marketing funnel, which is going to be useful for any email marketing you do, whether it's a sequence or just a single standalone email. Jack, have you done anything like that with any other clients? Have you worked on any marketing funnels?
We haven't done any marketing funnels, so to speak. Go back to your email funnels sorry, not the funnels, the automation. We've touched on that a little bit, and that was in order to deliver a series of videos. So a little bit, as you said, about there's a landing page. I had a client that was setting up a bit of a similar to this. So they wanted someone to sign up to have regular webinars or receive regular content. So part of that marketing process was to push them to a landing page, sign up, and then I think there were 4 emails that went out over the course of about 8 weeks, and it allowed focus on different points, and different points for people then to pick out which part of the tutorials or the help that they wanted. And this was around recruitment, or this was for recruitment agencies, and that was quite useful. It allowed us to learn a lot about everybody, because I think before we started, or when there was the idea of how can we do this via email marketing, was we'll just blast it out, we'll capture some data, and we'll sell the whole package to everybody that signed up. Was what we actually learned, that you can actually get more revenue from people selecting all 4 options or any one of a number. And I thought that was useful, both from using a funnel, but also then an automation, but also to use video, as you were saying before, to have someone in the email. I think that helped a great deal. But I haven't used a great deal of automation. No,
and you can go to great lengths. There's an app I'll show you later, which does much more complicated automation in terms of how you loop things together. I think really it can be very useful. One of the things Michelle talks about, and the reason it worked well for her, is that she was selling consultancy, marketing consultancy. And what she'd find is she'd get a call with someone, and she'd have the call with them, and they weren't ready to buy. They were like, well, that's interesting, but either I can't afford it, I don't need all of that, or any other number of reasons. The whole point of the marketing funnel was to take people down, to either rule them out and say, well, this isn't for you. What I'm selling, or the experience I'm going to give you is not right for you, or it's going to move them closer. So by the time they, I think, get the emails, they go on a webinar, and then they actually do go on a sales call with her, they want to buy. They're like clamoring to buy. There is no, she doesn't have to handle any objections. She doesn't have to give any reasons. They want to buy, and she just needs to find a way of helping them through that process. And that's really the way I look at it, that if you can find the right people, they will want to buy from you. If you've put everything in the right place and you've educated them as to the reason why they want it, or you've targeted it correctly. So just a few tools. We've talked about one of them, Campaign Monitor, but the other is MailChimp. So this is a really common email program that a lot of people use. I'd imagine most people have heard of MailChimp. For me, I like MailChimp, and we've got some clients who do use it. I know, Abby, you guys use MailChimp. I think one of the reasons people look at MailChimp is because it's free for up to about a list size of something like 2,000, 2,500 recipients, which is a lot. I mean, we've only got about 800, 900 recipients on our mailing list, so we could use MailChimp and it would be completely free. And I think for that, you can send several email marketing messages per month as well. So actually, for the majority of small companies, it's going to be a really useful tool that is completely free. They've got some great features in there, and they can do list segmentation. So you can, once you've set up your subscriber list, you can split that up into maybe different areas of the country, different types of products that people are interested in, and so on. You can have multiple lists. You can integrate with, I mean, MailChimp are one of the best, I think, at integrating with lots of different services. So, for example, you can get WordPress plugins that will take a form data and then push that straight into MailChimp for you. And then also, once something happens in MailChimp, if someone clicks on a link, you can get that to action somewhere else. So I think MailChimp are actually quite a good company in terms of what they offer. And a lot of people go for them because it's free to begin with, but it's still no bad thing. I also love the style. I don't know if you should just have a look at this website. Just go to MailChimp.com and have a look. I love this little animation of this bird who starts off as I think it's some flapping hands or something like that, and then turns into a bird and grows into a soaring eagle, sort of representing how a business might start. But it's just a whole lovely style about it. But it's not the email software we use. We don't use MailChimp because I find it over the top and a little bit intense in some places. And for someone like me or our company who are managing multiple accounts, we want something that is clear, concise, and we can flick between accounts very quickly and very independently. And MailChimp doesn't quite allow that. But, you know, it's a bit of a battle because a lot of other people, a lot of customers do want to use it because it's free. So on to that. The next one is Campaign Monitor. I like Campaign Monitor. It's got all the usual things like list segmentation. You've got journeys, which I showed you before. So you can say if someone clicks on a link, then they go into this segment, and then we can give them some additional information. So it's got all of that sort of stuff, but you have to pay per use. So even from the get-go, you're going to be paying about $5 per campaign plus something like 1 pence per. So I'm switching between dollars and sterling at the time. So it's about £5 per campaign, and then about a pence, 1.5 pence per recipient to send out. Really, it amounts to nothing. It's not a huge amount. And personally, for the system and the way it works and the consistency and the approach, I'm happy to pay that. You know, it's going to cost us between £5–10 per send when we send out. Obviously, if you're looking at something bigger than that, it's going to cost a bit more. But it's a really nice system. And as I said, for us, being able to manage multiple companies, it works really well. You've got advanced features. I think MailChimp has this as well. So if you've got people who live in different time zones, then you can send out the email that's going to match their time zone. So if I want to send it out 9 a.m. GMT, it's going to send it out at the right time in New York local time or California local time. It's going to just match that. So it's always 9 a.m. wherever that person lives. I know MailChimp has that too. So they're pretty much on a par. The one thing I really like about Campaign Monitor, though, is the ability to very easily design and set out emails. Now, all the examples I've shown you previously are all based in Campaign Monitor. it's really easy to set up and navigate and pull together a template that looks really good and works really well. And I think, Jack, do you have any experience with that in Campaign Monitor? Do you find that straightforward?
I use the two that I use are MailChimp and Campaign Monitor, exactly for the same reasons you said. Different clients want to use different things, but I like both of them for their own respective different ways of working. But from a design and an ease of use perspective, I do prefer Campaign Monitor.
Good. You don't have to say that, by the way. But
no, and I wouldn't say that. I mean, like I said, I've got I do a lot of work with one particular client in headhunting, and they insist that they want to use MailChimp, and that always has been the way, and it works and it's improving. But if I was going to start it again with them, we would move it across to Campaign Monitor. Like I said, not that they are. I like both of them for individual reasons, but I would prefer. If I had to choose one, it'd have to be Campaign Monitor. Yeah,
I just find for us working with a company, it's a very quick way to get something set up. I think if you're working on your own, so if you're an individual business, you can't knock MailChimp. I mean, it's really good and it's free. So if you're looking at saving every single penny, it's definitely worth looking at, and you can always migrate later. So moving on, so we mentioned about doing more email automation and having journeys of information. So basically using email as a communication tool. So rather than just bulk sending out, even if you're segmenting, using email to be very targeted and only send it to people when they have triggered something. There are lots of different applications and software services that do this. They're all quite pricey. I've found all quite expensive, especially if you just want to dip in a little bit. The cheapest and quite, it's not the best by any means, but the cheapest way to dip into that sort of automated marketing process is Autopilot. And what Autopilot allows you to do is set up a sequence. Let me see if I haven't got a picture of it there. Is to set up a sequence of triggers. So you can say, so it's code you actually put onto your website. So you could say, if anyone enters this page on the website and they, let's say, haven't filled out a form, so they're not in our contact database, then it can actually pop up a little message and say, how can I help you? Or do you need help with this? And then that can take them onto the form to maybe book a call back or do an RFQ or something like that. But if you have the person in the database and they visit a particular form, a particular page, you can then say, well, okay, they visited this page. Have they visited these other pages as well? Because if not, then let's send them an email to move them onto that web page. And so when they come offline, they go away, they'll receive an email maybe with a certain time delay saying, oh, well, if you're interested in this, you might also be interested in this particular type of information. So what you can start to create, if you go back to Michelle's marketing funnel and you're thinking about educating your customers before you even think about buying from you, or you think about talking about a sale with them, is that you can make sure that they've looked at all the relevant pages on the website. They know your price, they know how long the lead times are, they know your customers, they've watched all the videos before you can then start sending the sales messages that are really going to move them down that last part of the funnel. It's, I find, quite an overwhelming process. So you really have to know what you want to achieve and have to plan it out and have quite a rigorous plan saying, this is what we want to achieve and these are the types of people coming into it and this is what we want to focus on. I think if you can do that, then you effectively just drag and drop these elements together and chain a series of events. Very similar to the communion journey email I showed you earlier, but with many more features. You can even dip into the offline world and you can start sending printed media to them as well. So you can actually say, I want to, if all these things are triggered, then let's send a postcard to them using this graphic set and this bit of text on there, personalizing it with their name and that sort of thing. So it's actually quite a nice application to look at. But probably for most people, unless you've looked at just doing straight email marketing or just a simple journey on something like Campaign Monitor or MailChimp, it's going to be quite intense. But I thought I'd mention it. This is quite a nice little website. It's mailtester.com. And what you can do is if you've got an email preview, say from Campaign Monitor, it allows you to send yourself an email preview while you're developing it. This will give you a unique email when you come to this website, and this is completely free. Unique email. You send them the email that you're previewing, and it's going to run it through a sequence of tests here. So it says, for us, that's pretty good. Our message is safe and well formatted. We're not blacklisted, which is always good. No broken links. So this is an interesting one. I know in the past that when we've sent out emails, where maybe we've added a link at the last moment and it's broken for some reason, it's really frustrating. I know I get a number from other people where they send another email going, oops, I forgot to put the link in. And you don't want that to happen. So this can tell you whether that link actually resolved to a real a real website address, which is quite handy. It's got a little note here that Spam Assassin thinks we can improve. So Spam Assassin is a service that a lot of email clients might use or email servers might use to verify email and let it through and go to the recipient. So it runs it through a filter like that first. Actually, in this, we're pretty good. I had a look at the notes and it says if you are -5, then it's bad. You're going to get flagged and you're unlikely to get through. We're only -0.3. I can't remember what it was now, some little domain bit of text that we possibly need to put in, although I looked into it before and it's quite complex. Again, with that, you're not fully authenticated, but everything else I'm happy with. I've got a perfect score, which is 9.7 out of 10. So if you're unsure about, maybe you're setting up a new email marketing campaign, a new design, or you're just trying out some new things, it's worth looking at mailtester.com. As I said, it's free. There's another one that isn't free called Litmus, which does the same sort of thing, really. It allows you to preview the email through their servers and they can tell you what's working, what's not. They can tell you whether spam engines are going to flag it up. They'll actually do previews in a variety of different email clients like Mail on iOS, Outlook, Web in Gmail, AOL, Hotmail, that sort of thing. So if you've, again, got a new email template, you just want to make sure it looks right in all of these different email clients, you can do that. This actually comes included in Campaign Monitor, and I think possibly MailChimp as well. So when you get to the preview stage, you can just pay $5, £3, and you can run the test through their process as well. I mentioned about video before. This is a program I use. It is Mac only. There probably are some for PC that will do the same. I know there are websites where you can convert things, but if you've got a video and you just want to take a small subsection out of it, and convert it to an animated GIF or just an animated image, then this is a really good program for doing that, GIF Brewery. I think it does cost money. I don't think it's huge amounts, but there are links for doing that online. So I'm going to rattle through some email marketing tips. Yes, Claire. So Claire mentions you can use Giphy.com for free. Is that, Claire, is that for converting video to GIFs, or is that for finding animated GIFs that are around on the web? I wonder. Both. Okay, thank you. Okay, so email marketing tips. I'm going to rattle through these. So I think the first thing before you do anything else is to streamline. So if you've got a list, which is quite big, I think it's worth going through, removing any duds, removing anyone who isn't paying attention to the email because they're just costing you money and you're spamming them. Or maybe you're building up your, you're making it more easy for spam engines to block you because you keep going through to these people and they might, if they're not opening it or it's going through to the wrong place, then you might get flagged, which isn't good. So I think removing the people who don't need to be in there first. I think the GDPR last May was quite good time for doing that. I think a lot of people did clean their lists. Not everyone, but a lot of people did, so that's quite useful. I also think it's worth segmenting your list, and a segment is basically just a filter. It's just, here's your subscription list. Maybe you've got, could be counties associated with each user email on there, and you can put a filter in place that says, I want to create a segment to send to people who are just in Herefordshire or in London or whatever, however you want to break it up. So it's worth looking at those segments. You can even use market segments. We were talking before about Selmac having different market segments and making sure they're only talking to engineers or they're only talking to manufacturing companies. Segmenting that list is going to help a lot if they're not separate already. Know your audience. Again, you segment the list down. You don't just want to blast out an email which is generic to everyone. You want to make sure you're using a language that is relevant to them, trying to think about what would make them open an email. And if you don't know, think about what would make you open the email. When you see an email and you want to open it, what is it about that email that you like? Sometimes it can be having their name in there. Sometimes it could be making sure you're using the right keyword that is going to resound with that person. Sometimes it can be looking at a particular challenge that that person might have and sort of trying to use the exact phrase that would be in their mind. Oh, hi, Heidi. Thanks for joining us. You found segmenting has made a huge difference. I can imagine it has for you, actually. Would you mind, while I continue, if you mind just typing up how that's made a difference for you, and we'll read that out later on. So knowing your audience, that makes a big difference. Personalize it. So this is something I don't do a huge amount of, but I know other people do, and I think it's worth, they can see more click-throughs from it. But if possible, try and use their name, person's name, particularly in the subject title. I know if I see my name, I'm more likely to look at the email. Doesn't mean I'm going to open it, but I'm more likely to look at it if it's got my name in it. So it can help that visibility in their inbox, can increase open rates if they do click through. So that's always good. So personalization, and often programs like Campaign Monitor, MailChimp, and others will allow you to put a little variable in there like first name, last name, or however you're trying to personalize it, and it'll just swap that in as it goes live and sends those emails out. Now this tip was actually from a business coach many years ago, but he said about having an interesting or challenging subject line. So something that will resound with that person, or maybe challenge their opinion or expectation. So something that's going to make them sit up. You might see this a lot online, and it's referred to, if it's taken too far, as clickbait. So it could be something that either makes you angry, you've got to click on it, or it's something that aligns very smoothly with, very well with what you think already. But I think sometimes something that is challenging, something that really will pique someone's interest can be quite interesting. Also, other advice is ask a question. Sometimes having a question in there can be quite good. Make it intriguing, or going the other way, just telling the reader exactly what your email contains. I think for us, we try and go down that route. That we're producing this regular marketing email. I hope people want to receive it. I hope that when they receive it, they'll want to click on it and read it. So what we want to do is make sure that we put in the subject line exactly what's going to go in the email. Okay, next. Have purpose. I think this really resounds well with Selmac, actually thinking about what you want the email to do for you. So what is the goal? Why are you doing it? Use video. I just over all the emails that companies I've been working with and the emails we've been doing, having some sort of video on there has made a difference. Now you can't put video directly into an email, so you have to convert it to an animated GIF. So it's definitely worth doing. It's worth the extra time to invest into that. And if you do have a video, try and have the video, at least the still or the section of the video you're showing in the email, with a person in it. Especially a person talking, so people can say, oh, I click on it, I'm going to get person talking about said machine or product or whatever it might be. Something a lot of people don't do, and I do see this in a lot of emails, is they don't ask for action. So they send the email out and it may or may not be interesting, but they don't ask people to do something about it. So do you want them to read the articles in your newsletter? Well, then make sure you have links and maybe put read more, listen now, watch this, that sort of thing. Make sure you link out to the website. I still think a website is a really core hub for a lot of work, whether it's social media, even if you've got maybe an app or email or whatever it is, getting people back to the website is a really good way to measure how things are working. Make sure you include your phone number. That's worked quite well for Selmac, having that on there as a call to action, and draw people to it. So we showed you the video, the image of the triangle funneling down to the action at the bottom beneath the video. Try that, see if it works for you. Building trust. This is something we need to get better at, but trying to send consistently, sending at the same time so people know when they're going to receive the email, I think can be really useful. We find it difficult. I was talking earlier about having a deadline for an email and sending things out on that. Sometimes it can be tricky to hit that deadline all the time, but we do try and get it out before the month's end. Also, make it easy to unsubscribe. You don't want people to feel that once they've signed up for this email, they can't get out of it. Now, legally, you should allow them to very easily get off that list, but some people still don't. They make it a little bit more tricky than perhaps they should. And I think also aim just to create that unmissable email, something they want to receive. That is the point of it at the end of the day. We don't want to annoy anyone. We really want to get value from this, so they end up doing what we want them to do. And finally, I'm going to put in here, run experiments. Just like I was saying with Jack earlier, with Whitley Jones and Selmac, we've not just put an email template and just we're working to the same template each time. We're always looking to improve and refer back to the stats. So I think testing different subject lines out, or different content, different actions, what language you're using in terms of whether it's like download or find out more or buy, that sort of thing can be really useful. So run experiments, test things out, see if they improve or decline your numbers. So Heidi, thanks for that. So I'm just going to read out your answer here, because you were talking about how segmenting's made a huge difference. So you've got a big database of businesses. So I'll just give people a background, if you don't mind, Heidi. So Heidi runs Eat, Sleep, Live in Herefordshire, and has a huge database of a lot of tourism-based companies, such as B&B, hotels, or anyone really who's serving the tourism industry. And it was fractured into your different, so your databases were in one tourism sector, but fractured into accommodation, food and drink, activities. So making it relevant, headline relevant to all is not engaging, yes. So we tweak it and the subtext to find it relevant, tweak the content to people switch off if they can't relate. Yes, I totally understand. So do you send several emails out to those different sectors, or would you just try and find one that works with all of them? Keep articles short and use read more back to the website for locations. Yes, I think read more I found is a really good call to action, because it's I think if you put buy now, sign up, unless it's something that is very specific and maybe right at the end of the funnel, I think it's too much. I think it's too intense, and people are like, well, I don't want to buy now, but finding out more is good. So some info is generic. Lots of call to actions, good. Yeah, and I think just reviewing it on a regular basis is worth doing. I'll just mention here for the people who aren't customers of ours, then if you are interested and you want to sort of improve your email marketing, you can book a digital marketing support call with me, or maybe Jack, if that's more relevant, to go through your email or your communications with your customers and try and look at how you can improve that. And you can buy that on a half-hour basis or on an hourly basis. I will put in a link for people who are interested in that. Right, the floor is open for any more Q&As. We've got 3 minutes left before we have to finish. So if there's any other burning questions for Jack or I, please fire them through. So another comment from Heidi here. We try and keep it about them. We're a membership organization as much as it is about us wanting to sell stuff. So that's actually really important. And Jack and I were talking about that earlier, whereby certainly with Whitley Jones, we noticed if we were talking about them, the customer, and what would interest them or other schools, because I think people are not voyeuristic in this case, but they're interested in what other schools are doing and what trends are out there, then that resounded much more than something which was much more generic about Whitley Jones and how Whitley Jones has done something great. It's much more about them, which worked very well.
Ben, I think that's applicable across all areas of content, email marketing in this instance, but also whether it's social. I think it's exactly the same as if you view marketing as you as individuals when you're talking to people. If you can provide examples or interesting insights about things that are happening not too close to home, that sparks someone's interest. So in this instance, it encourages them to watch something or to click on something. Whether it's on social, it gives you a reason to follow and to look out for content. I think if people can move themselves or their ideas a little bit away from themselves, it encourages people to look a little bit deeper. But more so, especially with email, if you know emails are a very sensitive topic because you're contacting people personally. So yes, you've got to create this overall impression that is nice and warm, but once they get into the email, it's got to be of value and it's got to encourage them to do something else with it.
Yes. And actually, I didn't mention this earlier. I don't know why I didn't. It escaped me at the time. But in my experience, while social media and other sort of lighter forms of communication can get more engagement, more thumbs up or more comment, I find email tends to deliver more action.
Yes.
So I think if you can use social media to sort of bring people slightly closer, it's part of your funnel, and then either bring them onto your website or bring them into a list and then use that list to bring them a little bit closer. And once you've got them closer and they are the right people who are interested in what you want to sell them and they want to buy it, then email is a really good way of getting action. Now, there's a question here from Nikki. How often would you recommend to send out e-shots? It depends. We send out one once a month because I think that feels right for something that I would like to receive. There are some people who find maybe weekly can work well. I think if you are in a, if you're dealing with experts, for example, I know that there's some podcasts I listen to, and they, on them, they might have a Mac or technology analyst. So these are people who are talking about how that different companies in the tech sector are performing. Some of those might have a daily or weekly newsletter because the people it's going out to need to know, because it's going to affect share prices. So they need to know what's happening in the business pretty much as it happens so they can make decisions. I wouldn't say that that would work well for you, Nikki, but you could try something like a month or every 2 weeks, depending on what's going out. I think if you see some utility after sending like a monthly newsletter out and people are interested in certain subjects, then you may want to go out to the people who have clicked on those links and say, would you be interested in us making this every 2 weeks? Is that going to be more value for you, or do you actually quite look forward to the monthly one?
I think
probably wouldn't
as well, Ben, if you're looking at segmentation. I've got one in mind that with one client who work in headhunting, from the accounting side and the legal side, there'll always be a monthly newsletter. But then when we segment both sides of those business down, I think there's probably about 4 segments on the one and 5 on the other. Different segments respond to different things. And obviously it comes down to as well, you've got to have enough useful things to share with them.
Yeah.
But on the whole, everyone will receive an email once a month. But in 2 or 3 instances, they'll receive an email twice a month, every 2 weeks. And that's just simply down to us looking at the data, asking ourselves a question, and then running a number of tests. And now that is what we do every month. There'll be a variety of different things get sent to the respective segments.
Yeah, and I think you could have different, you might have an inside track, you know, let's say, for example, we have our IMC email list. We might say, actually, people in the club, we're going to send them an email once a week with just small tidbits as and when it happens. But then everyone else who's outside of that only gets it every month, a bit of a roll up, maybe some of the highlights from that. You know, I think that I've seen that before. Certainly, I've been members of these technology or more Mac specific clubs, and I got a weekly newsletter, and it was fascinating, even though it's quite a long newsletter with a lot of information in it. And it was just for paid subscriptions, so only people who are paying would get this newsletter. It worked quite well. Just go back to a few more questions here. Heidi says, we like how RI includes other people. It builds a community. Well, I hope so. Thank you for saying that. I want to do more of that. And I think for us, it is all about community. We certainly don't know everything. I want to bring in other people who do and share in what they learn. And really, I see that if we can be the people that you come along the journey for marketing with, then I'm happy with that. Claire comments, we found knowledge sharing works better than a direct sales pitch or offers. Yes, I think certainly in the videos that you've been putting out in the emails, it's not about buy this machine. It's about telling people how the sort of key facts about this machine and really going through the pros and cons of the different machine sets. So Claire's got a question here, which I think we'll use that as the one to wrap up with. How do you know when it's the best time to be delivered? I would experiment with that. Generally speaking, I've found that early morning on a Tuesday can be quite good. But we've sent them at different times. In the evening tends to work well for social media, can actually work quite well for emails if you're talking to business owners, because guess when they're checking their email, it's going to be when the phone shuts off. It's going to be when they stop working or get back from their meeting. It's going to probably be when they're in front of the TV, flicking through, wanting to clear down their email list. So that can be a good time for things to pop through. And if you can target that right, that can work. So yes, I would experiment with it, actually have it at different times and try out the same sorts of newsletter. Maybe it's a regular newsletter, sending it at different times to see what you get.
I agree with you. Tuesday is probably best, or Tuesday, Wednesday. But MailChimp actually has a function that once you've run it a couple of times or campaign on a list a couple of times, it will suggest to you when the best time to send is. Yes. Whether that's right or wrong, again, I would still urge you to experiment yourself. And let's say you might have your one main list to begin with, and then when you look to segment, there might be then differentials, but I would, I'd run your own tests, but also if MailChimp gives you a suggestion and it's just at the click of a button, I'll probably run the test with that as well.
Definitely. I'm going to just send out the handout to people here. So all the notes you've seen in the video, you'll be able to download that and just have those to hand if you want. Otherwise, we better finish up. So we are, we're just over an hour. I want to try and keep these to an hour. So this is spot on. So it's now time to pick the topic that you want for next month. So I'm going to put a little poll here. So I want you to have a look at the poll that should have popped up on your screen. And I've got a few examples here of things that might be interesting. One which is about getting reviews. One which is about YouTube stats, which actually, or YouTube stats and sort of dealing with YouTube, which is what Nikki recommended. Image finding and editing. I found that I've repeatedly telling people a lot about how to find free images online, making sure that you're not getting ones that are copy protected, so you're not going to find yourself in hot water later on, or actually paying for images or getting a photographer, and then image editing programs. Something else or something more specific if you want to dive into a particular topic. So currently I've got a couple of answers there, YouTube and image finding. Maybe can we have? Okay. Oh no, they're even Stevens. Have we got anyone else who can go in and tip the balance? Otherwise I'll have to randomly pick one. I think both could be interesting topics. So maybe we could do YouTube first and then move on to image finding and editing later on. Great. So yeah, we'll probably look at YouTube. We'll take it from there. That'll be the topic for next month. The date for next month, if I can look at my calendar, it's always the 4th Tuesday of each month. The date will be the 26th at 1 o'clock. Hopefully you can all make that. You'll all subscribe, so you'll get the notifications as and when that happens. If there is anyone who is not a paid subscriber or not a customer of ours, then you can go through and you can buy Internet Marketing Club membership at a very, very good rate on our website. So you can just go and click on that and buy that directly. Otherwise, I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I will make sure the video goes out to you in a couple of days once it's all compiled. Otherwise, thank you very much, Jack, for guesting. We'll hope to have you again, maybe talking about social. No problem. No problem. My pleasure. We'll talk about social media next time, one of your forte. And thanks very much, guys.